Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. At BriteVibe, we believe everyone deserves to be happy. But in today's world, everywhere you turn, there is division and negativity. At BriteVibe, we have created a global movement to bring 8 million people together who are inspired to live bright, live bold, and share bright vibes. Alone, it can be hard to change, but together we can change the world. Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. IssaMary, welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. So happy to have you on today. I'm excited for this conversation today.
Thank you for having me. I'm also super excited to be here.
Yes, we're going to talk about some fun stuff today. Your official title that I got to before the show is Shaman, right?
Yes.
Shaman. You studied in Africa, correct?
Yeah, also.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to take this a little different approach today because we're really going to look at what you do as a shaman, but in the vein of business, because you work with corporations, you work with executives, you work with leaders, and you also work with individuals. So we're really going to look at that and say, okay, what exactly, one, I want, if you would, just define what is a shaman?
So, a shaman has, obviously, we have different perceptions. You have your own perception, right? But for me and everyone that is hearing this have a different perception of what a shaman is. I'm going to give you mine.
Yes.
And my understanding. So shaman is a person that has the capacity to see beyond what you can see with your two physical eyes, to see what is, let's just call the invisible, or to see the capture, that see between the veils, see the unseen. But you're not capable to see with your two physical eyes, because we tap into the energetics. To really, really tap into energy, you don't rely on your two physical eyes, you rely on other stuff. And as a shaman, we really rely on all of our senses, and not just with the ones that we tap into our normal, exactly.
Right. So kind of what's been your experience working with organizations?
Yeah. So the first thing here is for people to understand that a corporation, like a company, is a living entity. It's not something that is just there. It's alive. It's not only composed, it's not only people. It's per se, it's alive. It's a living entity. And because of a living entity, you have to treat it as such. It's not just, that thing is just there. And that thing, right, that entity, that living thing, that company, as it's alive, you have to also take care of many different things. You have the people that works in the company, and because it's an ecosystem that fit from each other. Right? If the people what happens most of the time is that you have the employees, right? And you have the company that also, it's a living entity. They fit from each other. So when one of the parts is not in balance, or really it's just it affects the other. For example, if the company, the corporation, the health of the company, the energetics, because we're tapping into energetics. Obviously, it's a company. You cannot just take the pulse and things like that.
Right.
But the energy of the company, it's not in a good space, because it has been through a lot of transitions, a lot of change, and the market is just not doing great. So it's feeding from what the people are feeling. How are they feeling insecure? They feel like they might have going to lose their jobs. Oh my God, what's going to happen? There's a lot of this energy, and it feeds into it. So again, that we'll have to first clear that, right? Clear and have a healthy entity, a healthy organism, because on a healthy organism, everything thrives. It's like it's easier if you picture like a human being. If you're a human being, and you can take this to the next example that we're going to tap into it's as a person that works in the company. If your vessel, your physicality, if you're feeling, if you're good, if your health it's in a good place, if you're feeling good, you're positive, what you accomplish, where are you in a better space, where you can really deliver and really bring it when you are in that place. Company is the same. If you have a place, and there's many things that we can tap into it, just many things that play a role into it, but it just address it or see it as a living thing. And as such, you have to cover different aspects.
And, I've been in companies, I've founded companies, I've, been around business my whole life. And, a lot of times companies will say stuff about company culture, company values. And so those make up some of what we're talking about, but ultimately it's how the people in the company are interacting and how the customers are interacting. I mean, all of it comes into play. One of the models is like the stakeholder model. So it's basically everybody involved in this business ultimately is interacting with this business, and then it creates this kind of, you're calling it like an entity, but it is legally, it is an entity. It has its own tax ID number and it's got its own name, and but ultimately it's the people working there that collectively are kind of feeding into this. It takes on a life of its own. Like, and you hear people
Yeah.
say that my business took on a life of its own, or this problem took on a life in the business, took on a life of its own. Well, that's because there's lots of different factors feeding into that. So then how do you go about, I guess, making it healthy?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something really important. It
Hmm.
is the people, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
when we tap into the culture or it doesn't live in the walls.
Yeah.
It's like walk the talk, right?
Yeah.
That's the first thing that I tell people when I'm tapping, when I'm working with companies. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, what are your values? Where's your mission? Like, where's your culture? And it really even see if there is alignment, because there is a misalignment. That's where things go south. Because
Right.
again, you're not walking the talk. This is all the things, and that is not palpable. Your
Hmm.
employees are not going. They're not going to feel that, because again, it looks good on paper,
Right.
but
But if we're not living the values, then
you're
everybody
not
knows we're
embodying.
lying. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So
So
that's the
it's
first like
hypocritical.
no go.
Right. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And bottom line, when we go to energetic, it's out of alignment.
Right.
If it's not in alignment, then it's things go south. Simple as that. How you do it, but really embodying all of that
Hmm.
and be truthful too when you're having a company and you're doing, okay, what are your values?
Hmm.
What is your mission? And what is a culture? But truly, not just what is on the walls, right?
Right.
Because it
No,
looks
not
pretty.
right. Yeah.
It's exactly. And then when you work it from that way, and you
Mhm,
really that permeates, it really creates ripples, and that goes into the employees.
mhm.
And the employees can see like this is actually they wear it because
Right,
they believe it, right?
right.
And then it's a beautiful thing that start again creating ripples. And when we talk about it, really starts spreading, and that will go into the clients too.
Mhm.
They will also feel it's
Yes.
like, wow, it's so awesome to work with this company, because it's really, I really resonate with all
Mhm,
the statements, but they
mhm,
really embrace and they really embody that.
mhm,
That would be my number one, like the easiest, like the fastest thing that you can do is just be clear on it.
mhm,
Truly,
mhm,
is it in alignment with you? Not just because it looks good on paper, like if you
mhm,
really are like embodying those things. And then when you're that will transpire to your employees and they will feel it.
mhm.
And then it's an entity and they live feet from each other. So I'm believing
Yeah,
this company. I get it. And I'm proud of being a part of it. And I will that's create another energy through it. And again, create ripples, positive ones.
it's about being more aligned, which in essence then makes you a better business for humanity because at least people will know what you're about and then can choose easier versus they buy your service and then find out 2 months later that you're not about those very things, and then there's a bitterness or there's like this, like a broken contract or broken trust, right?
Yeah. And the other thing is that again, that that being in alignment, it goes such a long way, not only for you, but again, your employees, because employees are like, okay, the product is great. It's super
Yeah, right.
important, but the people that makes a company, they are equally
Yes.
important,
Right.
if not
Yes,
more.
totally. Yeah.
So if the people that works there, it's so infused by this
Mhm.
truth, but this really energy of, yeah, they believe, they buy it. They really engage in that.
Mhm.
Again, you go tap into productivity. It's been proved. I have worked with
Mhm.
companies and you measure before and after, and it just goes like, woof,
Well,
up.
yeah, and it makes sense, right? So on an individual level, what do you think's the, I guess, the biggest hurdle to being in alignment?
One of them is not being truth to what you really
Right.
feel, what you
Right.
really believe.
Hmm.
And that creates a dissonance within yourself and that creates conflict. And
Right.
whenever there's conflict, you're not on ease. There is just this, because within yourself, you're not honoring what really is inside of you.
Hmm.
You're doing something, but you don't believe in it. It's because you're not being truthful.
Right. Yep.
And it's again, what is truth? It's truth is different for each of us. And your
Right.
truth, it's good because it's yours. And mine is good because
Hmm.
also it's mine. And I respect yours and you respect mine. And
Hmm.
we don't have to have the same one. It's
Right.
just for us to have, I am, and I'm totally okay with my truth. I love
Mhm.
it. I accept it. I'm proud of it. I'm not in conflict within myself. So
Right.
try the first thing would be to try to eliminate the inner conflict.
Right. And I think we see that often in any organization, but especially in work organizations, people that are doing something that they don't truly believe in because it doesn't align with their values, but it's maybe what they've always done, right? I've always, done accounting. And so it just gets wider and wider. And then, that causes issues at work. But obviously the main issue is it's happening in that person. It's affecting their family life, friendships, it affects when we're not being authentically true to what we believe and what we know to be true and what we want to do, then it creates conflict. So then we manifest that externally, right? We then
Absolutely.
we say things we shouldn't, and we drink too much, or we watch too much Netflix, or we look for ways to soothe the pain, so to speak, or to
Yeah.
live the lie,
Yeah.
right?
Mm, yeah. Absolutely. Totally.
Yeah, I have no experience in
100% with
this.
you.
I have no
No.
Lisa, I have no experience, and I'm just talking hypothetically. I read it in a book one time. You
Okay.
know?
Yeah. That was a really good book.
That was a
You're
great
on point.
book.
Yeah.
That
You're
was a
on point.
great book. And
Yeah.
pre-show, so one, it's kind of back to the values and in the mission, knowing your own values, which I have a hard time just sitting down and saying, and I've done the exercise off and on throughout my life, but just sitting down and saying, what are my actual values? What do I actually value and why?
But also, it's a thing, it changed.
You're right.
And
Right.
it's
That's
fine
true.
that it changed because we're constantly changing. The only thing that is sure is that, well, one, so we're going to die. And the
Right.
other one is that we're constantly changing.
Right.
And
Yes.
also, don't hold yourself like, oh, no, but this used to be my, that's what it's really good. Another exercise that I could recommend people to do is check in with yourself
Hmm.
every once in a while. You don't have to do it every, like once a month or anything because they don't change so fast.
Hmm.
But I don't know, once every year or every
Hmm.
couple of years, just sit
Hmm.
down and find out again, okay, what are like really this use, and you write them down and you feel into it. I said, wow, this used to be like, I used to be 100% on this. And now I read it and I don't feel it now.
Hmm.
They don't feel absolutely like 100 yes inside of me. And it's fine. That means you have grown, you have evolved, you have
Right.
changed, and that's part of it. And then you just tweak here and there
Hmm.
so you can be again in alignment.
In
But
alignment. Yeah, we're
it's
living
just a,
creatures. We evolve, right?
yeah,
We hope we evolve, but we change.
yeah, we do. Yeah.
Hopefully it's for the better. Not always, but hopefully. But so yes, give yourself grace, I guess, in that.
What
Even
is
in
it you really
families. It
want?
happens in families all the
And they're
time,
like,
right?
yeah,
I mean, when's the
it
last time
happens.
as a family you sit down and you say, "Okay, let's figure out what our family values are." And I know that that's a practice that people have preached to me before. I've never done it where I've sat down. I mean, what are our values? What do we stand for? What are we about so that we can be in alignment, right? So that when we want to take a vacation, it aligns up with our
Well, what
values
we
or
truly want. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
or if we're going to send our kids to a certain school, does that line up with our values, right? I mean, so really taking it to that individual and family, looking at, am I being congruent with my life, right? This is
Exactly.
great for me today. I'm glad you came along today.
Oh, thank you. But you see, you can really take it from the macro.
Uh-huh.
We
Yep.
can use it for a big, big, big enterprise, like a huge company. And then you go
Right.
like, oh, let's go to teams. And
Yep.
I don't know, we're going to individuals. But
Right.
you can do it this big, or
Hmm.
I can work with you only, or with a
Right.
huge, huge company. It doesn't matter. If we tap or we really go into the similar topics, regardless of if it's big or
Right.
it's small.
It's an organism. And it's an
It is an
organization, right?
organism.
Whether it's an
Yes.
organization of cells or an organization of people, right? It's
Yep.
all
Yeah.
an organization, right?
Yeah. 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 Totally. Exactly. A
Yeah.
living entity, as I said in the beginning.
Totally. And so, one other thing we talked about pre-show, which I think is super important, and I don't think gets done enough, and especially in this again cancel culture and social media, and everybody's hating on this or hating on. It seems like everybody has an opinion about everything,
Mhm.
when it comes to anything. But there's a lot of resentment that builds up. But then you mentioned this thing about forgiveness, right? And so I want, I'm going to be very open minded. I hope all of our listeners are going to be very open minded because this is probably one of the biggest things that we can do in our lives. I believe the biggest thing we can do in our life if we truly want to see lasting change and shifts in every area of our life. I think it hinges on this part right here that you're about ready to enlighten us on. So let's talk about this whole thing of forgiveness.
Yay. That's one of my favorite topics ever.
Yes. Yes.
I'm super passionate about it because it truly is after many years working with forgiveness, I see really forgiveness as a key.
Right.
And not only as a key it's a key to unlock your full potential.
Hmm.
It's a key that opens the door, or it's a key that allows you to really, you're becoming your fullest, your everything, not just the parts that are pretty. Like just
Right.
these are the things I like. The other parts of my life that were super difficult and they were not so great, I'm just gonna
We're just going to
pretend they're
pretend they
like the
didn't.
elephant.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you work with forgiveness, and one of the things that we do with forgiveness is for you to own your story. And that's what I tell to my clients is let's own our story,
Hmm.
everything,
Hmm.
the ups and the downs, the pretty and the ugly, the everything, because everything it's making you. And especially those deep moments, like it was
Right.
like when we go and there comes this wave that roll us and it just put us like underwater. They were like,
Hmm.
okay, this is it kind of moment in life. When you come up to the surface, or when you're in that process, during that process is that that's the growing phase.
Hmm.
That's where you're really, really stretching and you're really, really growing as an individual, as a human being, as a person, as a
Hmm.
professional, as a father, you're really growing, right? It's not comfortable.
Right.
It's not, because it's taking you out of your comfort zone.
Right.
And growth only happen out of your comfort zone, right? And what happened with forgiveness, it is really allow us to do that, to say, you know what? I'm not gonna let this part of my life, this episode, this person, this thing that happened to be to kind of minimize me, to keep me small. But also
Yes.
forgiveness, it's a stepping stone.
Oh, okay.
Forgiveness is something that once you learn and once you start working with forgiveness, it's a choice. But once you take you choose to work with forgiveness, forgiveness can actually it's a stepping stone that can take you forward.
Nice.
Forgiveness helps you to move forward,
Hmm.
not only with your life, right? But
Hmm.
also with what we were talking before about development, or
Hmm.
us like growing and being like
Hmm.
better human beings. Forgiveness allows you to do that,
Hmm.
helps you to do that. And one of the things that I'm incredibly passionate about forgiveness is because forgiveness means freedom.
Right.
And why I say that, because once you're talking and you're working with forgiveness, a lot of things that happen, or a lot of times, not only with my clients, in general, human
Hmm.
beings, we say,
Hmm.
no, I'm done. I'm over with that. I'm just like,
Right.
oh, I
Right.
don't have
Yeah.
to
I
move
was
on
just
of
thinking that.
anything.
Yeah. You're
I'm
right.
like, yeah, I'm good. And you talk and you're like, okay. And you start talking about that topic, but
Uh-huh.
people start getting triggered.
Yes.
And then it's when
Yes.
I said, okay, if you are getting triggered, it's because you still have a hook.
Right.
And if you still have a hook, you haven't fully
Good.
forget. Because when you
Right.
forget fully, absolutely, we're done with that whole process of forgiveness. You lose all the hooks.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you don't remember what happened, that you deny that. No, you absolutely,
Hmm.
what as I said before, your forgiveness is about fully owning your whole of your journey.
Hmm.
Everything, the ups and the downs, the good and the
Right.
pretty and the ugly. But because you own everything and you embrace it, you don't have to hide it. You don't have to deny it. And there is a thing that is really important, and it's to know that forgiveness is not about others.
Right. Yeah.
Forgiveness is about yourself.
Right.
Forgiveness is you freeing yourself from carrying the weight of that thing that is actually holding you back.
Right. I love it. I love it. So you've obviously, as a shaman, you've studied with other shaman, but you've studied things that are um, more in the space of um, seen but not with the eyes, right? And felt but not with the hands necessarily. So if it was a seed of wisdom that we could plant today that would give root, what would that seed of wisdom be that you would want everyone to know?
I think it would definitely have to do with love and with our capacities. We
Mm.
are stronger than we believe. Definitely, we are. We are incredibly, as human beings, we have the capacities, our resilience is so incredibly big. And we have our capacities to love, our capacities to forgive, our capacity to give, our capacity to expand, to grow. It's so we don't even grasp how powerful we are. And it would be for people to give themselves more credit for how incredibly magnificent you already are as you are today. We try to put ourselves like, oh, but I can do better, but I can do this. And I can, and just out, my thing would be to stop for a minute and just look back in your journey and said, wow, look how much we have done so far. This has been quite a ride. This is awesome. Yes, I know. And then you look at it and you look to the front and said, oh, and we still have quite a way, another way to go. But you know what? We're doing great. And then
Right.
just tap yourself on the back and really acknowledge how far have you come?
Mhm.
How far have you come? And that would be definitely that part. And to remind yourself that even when you doubt how incredibly powerful and beautiful and incredible you are, it is inside of you, just waiting to be discovered. It is there. You just need to tap into it. You have everything. We have everything already within us. We look at it on the outside, but actually we have to start doing this more because it's already here. So look inside.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and on the Bright Vibe podcast. We love to put out bright stuff, bright vibrations into the world, right? That's what the show's all about. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely. I so much appreciate and enjoy the conversation. And thank you for everyone that is going to hear this and it's going to resonate and that these seeds of light, as I call them, they're with been planted since we started this conversation, might sprout in the most beautiful ways.
Thank you for being a part of the Bright Vibe podcast. For more information, go to britevibe.com. That's BRITE Vibe, VIBE.com. Thank you for listening.